I never imagined that a single phone call could unravel everything I had built, everything I believed about my family. But that's exactly what happened. My name is Mia, and I'm 30 years old. I had a life I thought was settled. I had a stable job, a small but cozy apartment, and a group of friends who were always there for me. On the outside, everything seemed normal. Everything seemed under control. But that all changed the day I got the text. It was an ordinary afternoon, one of those quiet moments where everything felt like it was moving in its usual rhythm. I had just finished a meeting at work and was grabbing a quick coffee when my phone buzzed. It was from my mom. It wasn't unusual for her to text, but the message caught my attention immediately. Family meeting tomorrow at 3 p.m., be there. At first, I thought nothing of it. It could be about anything, really. Maybe she wanted to talk about some family event, or maybe it was about something trivial. But for some reason, this text felt different. It had a weight to it, an urgency. My heart skipped a beat. I had always been close with my grandfather, Charlie Matthews. While my mom was busy with her own life, Grandpa had been my constant. He was the one who made me believe that nothing worth having comes easily. He had built his hardware store chain from the ground up, starting with a small loan and turning it into a thriving business empire. To me, he was the epitome of strength, integrity, and wisdom, my role model. And unlike my mom, he understood the value of hard work, of perseverance. When my father left when I was young, Grandpa became the father figure I never had. He was the one who taught me everything: business principles, how to negotiate, how to treat employees with respect. Every weekend, I'd spend hours in his office looking over inventory reports, learning the ins and outs of his business. His voice still echoed in my head. Your business is only as good as the people who run it when you're not around, Mia. I had always assumed that when the time came, he would leave me something, maybe the store or some savings, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. The next day I arrived at my childhood home, my stomach in knots. I hadn't heard anything from my mom about Grandpa's will, but with that message, I had a feeling I knew what it was about. As I walked through the familiar door, everything felt off. The living room, where we'd spent countless family dinners, felt oddly cold. My mother was sitting on the couch, her expression unreadable. Next to her was my stepfather, Craig, and my brother, Max, who was barely a part of family matters, but seemed unusually tense. But it was the two unfamiliar faces sitting at the table, dressed in expensive suits, that threw me off. "Mom?" I asked, my voice shaky, unsure of what I was about to walk into. She looked up, her smile cold and calculated. "Mia?" she said, her voice too sweet for comfort. "Meet our lawyers." I froze. Lawyers? This wasn't just a family meeting. Something was wrong. I could feel my heart racing, the air around me thick with tension. My mind was already spiraling, trying to process everything. This was supposed to be a family gathering, a time to share memories and honor Grandpa's legacy. But instead, I was about to be thrown into something I wasn't ready for. I glanced at my mom. Her face was composed, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Anger? Maybe fear? It was hard to tell. "Mom, what's going on?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She turned to me, the fake smile still in place. "It's time to discuss the will, Mia. Your grandfather's estate." I blinked, not sure if I heard her correctly. "What about it?" Without responding directly, she gestured to the lawyers. They both stood up, one of them clearing his throat. "Ms. Matthews," the first lawyer said, looking at me over his glasses, "we're here to assist with the execution of Mr. Matthews's will." I could barely process what was happening. My grandfather's passing had been difficult enough, but this was something else. I had never imagined that after his death we would be here, facing each other in a room like this, dealing with something as cold and transactional as money. Your grandfather was very specific with his wishes, the second lawyer continued. He left the entirety of his estate to you, Mia. This includes his business holdings, real estate, investments, and personal properties. Everything. Everything. I couldn't breathe. My hands went cold and the room seemed to spin. I had been close to Grandpa, yes, but I never expected this. The business, his wealth, it was all now mine. But what about my mother? What about the family I grew up with? Didn't they have a claim to it too? My mind was racing, but before I could form a single thought, my mother's voice cut through the air. "Wait!" she said sharply, her face twisting with anger. "There must be some mistake. I'm his daughter. I should be the one inheriting everything, not her." She pointed a finger at me, her voice filled with venom. "I'm his only child. This is a mistake." The lawyers exchanged uncomfortable glances, but my mother wasn't finished. "You don't understand, Mia," she continued. "This business, this estate, this was always supposed to be mine." Her words stung, but there was more to it than just the money. There was something deeper, something I hadn't fully realized until now. My mother had always been reckless with money, never truly understanding the value of hard work. She had spent the majority of her life blaming everyone else for her mistakes. And now, here she was, demanding that I give up what was rightfully mine. "You don't even know how to run this business," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "I'm the one who should have it. I'm his daughter." I could feel the anger rising inside me, but I stayed calm. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me. Not this time. "Mom," I said slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. "Grandpa made his decision. He left everything to me because he believed in me. He trusted me with his legacy." "That's not fair," she yelled, slamming her hand down on the table. "He was manipulated by you. He didn't know what he was doing." I stood up, my hand shaking, but my resolve was solid. Grandpa knew exactly what he was doing, and I'm not giving this up. Not to you. Not to anyone. The day my grandfather, Charlie Matthews, passed away was one of the hardest of my life. He had been more than a grandfather to me. He had been my mentor, my guide, and the one constant in a family that was anything but predictable. My mother, Patricia, had always been a wild card, spending money recklessly, never holding down a steady job, always bouncing from one crisis to another. Grandpa had always been the stabilizing force, keeping our family afloat with his business acumen and hard work. I had grown up watching him build his business from the ground up. Charlie Matthews wasn't just a man who worked hard. He was a man who believed in the power of perseverance, of learning from failure, and of treating people with respect. When I was younger, he used to tell me stories about how he started his hardware store chain with nothing but a small loan. Those were the moments when I realized just how strong he was, not only in business, but in his unwavering belief that you had to earn what you wanted in life. As I grew older, our bond deepened. Grandpa and I would spend Saturdays together in his office. He'd let me help with inventory reports, and we'd talk about profit margins, marketing strategies, and how to treat customers and employees with dignity. I learned more from him in those years than I ever did in school or in any textbook. It was Grandpa who taught me that hard work, integrity, and values were the true measure of success, not the amount of money in your bank account. And yet, I knew my mother didn't understand any of that. She never had the patience to work for anything. everything was handed to her on a silver platter. I'd watched her spend money like it was water. Designer bags, clothes, shoes, anything that caught her eye. I couldn't remember a time when we didn't have debt collectors calling the house. My mom was always remortgaging the house, maxing out credit cards, and never once taking responsibility for the mess she'd made of our finances. All that mattered to her was the image she projected. Rich, successful, carefree. But behind that image was a wreck of a person who had never learned to manage money or to live within her means. It wasn't just her spending that caused the rift between us. It was the way she treated everything around her like it was disposable. People, relationships, and even the money Grandpa gave her. I remember the time when Grandpa had given her money to pay off our mortgage. I was about 12, and I overheard her arguing with him on the phone. She had spent the money on a new car for herself. She was always asking him for more, but when it came to paying him back, there was always an excuse. Despite all of this, Grandpa never gave up on her. He continued to support her financially, even as she made poor decision after poor decision. I think he believed deep down that if he kept giving her enough, she'd finally get it. But she never did. That's why, when the will reading happened, I was stunned. I knew my grandfather had been ill, but I never imagined he'd leave everything to me. The family business, the legacy he had built, was mine. And it wasn't just the business. It was the house, the properties, the investments, everything he'd spent his life working for. I had always thought that one day, Grandpa would pass the business to me. But this was something else entirely. I had never expected him to leave it all to me, especially not in the face of my mother's constant demands. But now here I was, sitting in a room full of strangers, the lawyers, my mother, my stepfather, and my brother, watching as my grandfather's wishes were laid bare in front of me. And in the room, it felt like I was being handed something I had worked my whole life for, yet it felt like a burden too heavy to carry. When the lawyer read the will, I could barely breathe. I wasn't prepared for the magnitude of the decision Grandpa had made. He had made it clear that I was to inherit everything. His business holdings, his real estate properties, his savings, everything. The moment the lawyer said my name, I felt the weight of it all descend on me. And then my mother spoke. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the silence of the room. "This is a mistake," she hissed, her face turning crimson. "I'm his only daughter. This should have been mine. I built this family. I am the one who is entitled to this." The lawyers exchanged nervous glances, but they stayed silent. My mom was spiraling, her voice rising in fury. She wasn't going to let this go. I was the one who cared for him in his final years. I'm the one who sacrificed everything for this family. How dare he leave it all to you? Her words stung more than I cared to admit. I could feel the anger rising inside me, but I stayed composed. I had to. I had made a promise to Grandpa, and I wasn't about to let my mother's manipulations push me into something I wasn't ready for. "Mom, please," I said softly, my voice shaking with the weight of it all. "I didn't ask for this. Grandpa made his decision. He left everything to me because he believed in me. He trusted me to carry on his legacy." My mother sneered at me. "He trusted you? That's rich. You're just a child, Mia. You don't know how to run this business. You're too young, too inexperienced. You've always had things handed to you." Her words hit hard. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, but I stood my ground. "I've worked for this, Mom. I've spent years learning from Grandpa. I've been here, right by his side, while you've been out spending his money without a second thought." That was the moment the true nature of this battle became clear. It wasn't just about money. It wasn't about the business. This was about power. This was about control. I could see the resentment in her eyes, the jealousy, the entitlement. She had always believed that everything should be hers by birthright. But this was different. This time I wasn't going to back down. The week that followed the will reading felt like a slow-motion nightmare. It was as if the ground beneath me had shifted, and everything I thought I knew about my family was now in question. The pressure didn't let up. If anything, it only intensified as my mother, Craig, and even distant relatives made their voices heard, trying to guilt and manipulate me into giving up what was rightfully mine. It started with a barrage of text messages. My phone buzzed constantly, day and night. Every time I looked at the screen, it was either another passive-aggressive message from my mother or another plea from family friends who had apparently been disappointed by my actions. Mia, you need to think about the bigger picture here. Grandpa would have wanted us all to share in the wealth. Why are you doing this to the family, Mia? You're not being fair. Your mother deserves this. She's been through so much, and now you're just taking everything away from her. Think about what's best for everyone. The messages felt like daggers, each one a new attempt to chip away at my resolve. I could feel the guilt weighing down on me. My mother, with her constant manipulations, was relentless. Every conversation felt like a war of attrition, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could hold on. But then came the phone calls, the ones that really hit home. One evening, as I sat in my apartment trying to work through the mountain of papers related to Grandpa's estate, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Mia? The voice on the other end was slurred, tinged with alcohol. Craig? I asked, my stomach sinking. I hadn't heard from my stepfather in days. Yeah, he said, his voice thick and slow. We need to talk. You've made a huge mistake, Mia. This whole thing isn't about you. It's about the family. You gotta think about what's best for everyone, okay? I took a deep breath, my patience already wearing thin. What do you mean, Craig? This is about the family. Grandpa's estate was left to me, and I'm going to respect his wishes. You know that. No, he said, a slight laugh in his voice. You don't understand. You think you can handle all this on your own? The business, the money? You don't know the first thing about running it, Mia. I'm just trying to help you. You should let me help you. I clenched my fist, trying to remain calm. You don't get it, Craig. I'm doing this for Grandpa. I'm doing this because it's what he wanted. Listen to me, he continued, his voice becoming more insistent. There's a house in Naples we're planning on buying. We've already put down the deposit. Your grandfather knew what was coming. He knew how much time he had left, and he gave us everything we needed. You think this is fair? You think it's fair that you get everything and none of us do? I was speechless. The audacity. You've already spent Grandpa's money before he even passed? I finally managed to say, my voice trembling with anger. It's not like that. We were planning ahead. We were preparing for when when he'd be gone. Now you've ruined everything. We were going to use that money to buy the house, and now you've taken it all. Do you have any idea what you're doing? The words hit like a punch to the gut. He wasn't even pretending to be concerned about Grandpa's legacy anymore. This was about greed. This was about their own plans, their own comfort, and they were willing to manipulate me into giving it all up. I was livid, but I didn't show it. You've already spent his money before he even passed away, and now you want to use me to cover it up? I said, my voice steady but with a bite. You don't understand, Mia. Craig's voice softened. You don't know what it's like. We had plans. Your mother and she's falling apart. We can't let this happen. I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it aside. You've always used her to justify your actions, Craig. And this time, I'm not going to let you. I'm not going to be manipulated. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Craig let out a deep sigh. You'll regret this. You'll see. You'll be sorry. I didn't say another word. I hung up the phone and sat there in stunned silence. For a moment, everything felt like it was slipping through my fingers. They had already spent Grandpa's money, and now they were coming for everything else. I could feel the pressure building. The following day, my mother's behavior took another turn. She called me again, this time more composed, but still with that same underlying tone of entitlement. Mia, she said, her voice syrupy sweet. We really need to talk. I'm just so hurt by everything that's happening. You're taking everything Grandpa worked for and you're pushing the family out. You can't just think of yourself, sweetheart. You have to think about all of us. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to steady my breath. Mom, I'm doing what Grandpa wanted. He trusted me. He left me the estate. No, she said quickly, cutting me off. You don't get it. He was sick. He wasn't in his right mind when he made that decision. I know he loved you, Mia, but he was my father. I deserve this. You don't have the experience. You're not ready. You're going to ruin it all. Her words hit me harder than I wanted to admit. Mom, Grandpa was lucid. He knew exactly what he was doing. He chose me because he trusted me. That's just it, she snapped. You've always been his favorite. I've been here, raising you, making sacrifices, doing everything for this family. And now you get everything handed to you on a silver platter? Mom, you don't understand, I said, trying to stay calm despite the rising anger. Grandpa worked his whole life for this. He earned it. He wanted me to carry on his legacy, and I'm going to do that. But I'm not going to let you ruin it with your greed. She was silent for a long time, and I almost thought I had gotten through to her. But then she spoke again, her voice thick with anger. I'm your mother, and I will not let you destroy this family. With that, the line went dead. As the days passed, the reality of the situation started to sink in. My family wasn't going to let this go easily. My mother, Craig, and even some distant relatives were going to fight me every step of the way. And I had no idea how far they were willing to go. They had already shown their true colors: greedy, manipulative, and unwilling to understand that Grandpa's wishes were final. But what hurt more than anything was the realization that they weren't just after money. They were after control. They wanted to dictate what I did with the legacy Grandpa had left me, to ensure they got a piece of the pie, even if it meant tearing apart everything he had worked for. They were trying to use me, guilt-trip me, and emotionally manipulate me into giving up what was rightfully mine. And for the first time in my life, I had to ask myself, how far would I go to protect Grandpa's legacy? The weeks following the phone calls from my family felt like an eternity. The pressure to give in and hand over the estate intensified every day. My mother's messages came with greater urgency, the guilt trips more pointed. The once family house was now a battleground of accusations, threats, and emotional manipulation. The more I resisted, the more aggressive they became. Every day I questioned myself. Was I doing the right thing? Was I just a naive girl holding on to something I couldn't handle? My grandfather had left me this responsibility, this legacy, and I had to protect it. But with every call, with every email from my mother, it felt like I was on the verge of losing everything. My family, my sense of peace, and the very thing Grandpa had worked so hard for. The breaking point came when I received a message late one evening. Mia, it's not too late to fix this. You know what needs to be done. Meet us tomorrow at 3. We can work this out." There was no question mark, no negotiation, just a command. I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity. "It's not too late." The words echoed in my mind. It wasn't about fixing things. It was about power. It was about them trying to manipulate me into signing everything over. And I knew it. I wasn't going to let them do this to me. I couldn't ignore the message. I couldn't keep hiding from the confrontation. It was time to face it head on. I called my lawyer, Samantha, and briefed her on the situation. She had been helping me gather evidence for weeks, documenting every call, every message, every attempt at manipulation. It felt like I was preparing for war. "Don't go alone, Mia," Samantha advised, her voice calm but firm. "I'll be in my car nearby. If anything feels wrong, text me now and I'll be there." I nodded, feeling both empowered and terrified at the same time. This was it. I was going to stand my ground. The next day, I arrived at my mother's house at precisely 3 p.m. The once familiar sight of the front door now felt like an entryway to a battlefield. I walked up the porch, my heart hammering in my chest, but my resolve was strong. I wasn't going to be manipulated anymore. Not by my mother, not by anyone. When the door opened, I was greeted by my mother's cold smile, the same smile that had always made me feel small. Behind her, Craig and my brother Max sat on the couch, both with expressions of quiet discomfort. But it was the two men in expensive suits sitting in the armchairs that made my blood run cold. "Amber," my mother greeted me with that same fake sweetness. "Perfect timing. This is Mr. Wilson and Mr. Daniels. They're here to help us sort this out." I had no intention of sitting down. I wasn't there for a friendly chat. "I'm not here to be convinced, Mom. I'm here because I'm honoring Grandpa's wishes." "Sit down, Mia," she said firmly, stepping aside to let me in. "Let's talk. This is for the family." I didn't take the seat offered to me. Instead, I stood, arms crossed, facing her. I could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on me, my mother's, Craig's, Max's, and the two lawyers who had no idea what they had walked into. The tension in the room was palpable. I could hear my breath shallow and fast as my mother began to speak. "Maya, you don't understand what you're doing. Grandpa was sick and he didn't know what he was signing. I'm his daughter. I should have control of this business. I should have control of everything. You have no idea how much pressure I've been under. This is what he would have wanted." "Stop," I interrupted, cutting through her words like a knife. "No, Mom, this is not what he wanted. He trusted me. He left everything to me because he knew I could do it. You want it for yourself. You want to control everything. But this isn't your decision to make anymore." She slammed her hand down on the table, her face twisted with rage. "You're selfish. You're going to ruin everything. You're going to destroy this family." I wasn't going to back down. I couldn't. "You've already destroyed this family, Mom. You've been destroying it for years. This isn't just about the money. This is about your greed, your inability to take responsibility, your constant excuses." The lawyers exchanged uncomfortable glances, but neither of them spoke. They were there to do their job, but they had no idea how deeply personal this was. "This is about doing what's right," I continued, my voice steady but strong. "Grandpa made his choice and I'm going to honor it. If you want to contest this will, then go ahead. But I'm not backing down. I'm not giving up what he worked his whole life to build." The weeks after my confrontation with my family felt like a blur of conflicting emotions, but somehow I found myself more resolute than ever. The initial shock of everything that had happened was finally starting to wear off, and I was beginning to get a clearer sense of the responsibility that came with inheriting Grandpa's estate. It wasn't just about the properties or the money. It was about carrying on his legacy, his work, and his values. But despite my determination, the emotional toll of standing up to my family was weighing heavily on me. Every day, I received more messages, more calls, more attempts to convince me to change my mind. My mother, well, she was relentless as always. It was as though the anger and bitterness were the only things that sustained her. My phone would buzz with her texts, ranging from guilt trips to outright threats. Mia, you have no idea what you're doing. You're destroying the family. Think of Max. Think of Jason. I raised you. I gave up everything for you. And this is how you repay me? The words stung, but they no longer had the power they once did. Each message, each call, only strengthened my resolve. I wasn't doing this for my mother. I wasn't doing this for Craig either. I was doing it for Grandpa. I was doing it for his business, his values, and everything he had built. I kept reminding myself that this wasn't a personal attack. It was about doing what was right, honoring Grandpa's wishes, and keeping his legacy intact. And even though my mother couldn't see that, I knew I was on the right path. The first thing I did was consult with my lawyer, Samantha, who had been an invaluable ally throughout this process. Samantha had been instrumental in gathering evidence, documenting every attempt from my mother and Craig to manipulate the situation, and ensuring that Grandpa's wishes would be respected. She was sharp, determined, and incredibly well-versed in estate law. "Let's start with getting everything in order, Mia," Samantha said one afternoon when we sat down to review the documents. "You have Grandpa's will, the trust documents, and the journal entries. We'll make sure everything is airtight. If they want to contest this, they'll need more than empty threats." I felt a surge of gratitude towards Samantha. She had been there for me when everything felt like it was falling apart. She never made me feel like I was alone in this. But still, the pressure was mounting. The threat of legal action from my mother and Craig was very real, and I had to be prepared for a long, drawn-out battle. I wasn't sure what they were planning, but I knew I needed to stay strong. "I'm ready," I said firmly, looking her in the eye. "Let's make sure Grandpa's wishes are upheld. I don't care what they do. This is about more than just the money." Samantha nodded, her expression grave. "Exactly. We'll handle the legal side. You focus on the business. It's time to honor Grandpa's legacy." Despite my preparations, the tension with my family only escalated. My mother was growing more desperate by the day. One evening, she showed up unannounced at my apartment, her eyes wild with anger. She was holding a stack of papers, and she wasn't alone. "I'm not here to argue, Mia," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "I just want what's mine, what Grandpa promised me. This whole thing, it's tearing me apart." I stood in the doorway, trying to keep my composure. "Mom, I've already told you. Grandpa made his decision. He trusted me to carry on his legacy. This isn't about you. It's about him." Her smile was bitter, twisted. "You don't understand. You're too young. You've never had to fight for anything in your life. You've always had everything handed to you. Well, now you're going to see what happens when you take what doesn't belong to you." My heart raced, but I forced myself to stay calm. "This does belong to me, Mom. Grandpa made his decision, and I'm going to honor it." She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she reached into the stack of papers she was holding and pulled out a document. "This is a legal notice," she said, her voice lowering. "I'm contesting the will. You can't do this. I won't let you." I felt a chill run down my spine. She wasn't just talking anymore. She was taking action. This was real. The battle for Grandpa's estate had just taken a new, darker turn. I don't care what you do, I said, my voice hardening. I'm not giving up. I'm not signing anything. Grandpa trusted me, and I'm gonna keep his business running the way he intended. You're making a mistake, Mia, she said with a final venomous glance. You'll regret this. You'll see. She left, slamming the door behind her, and I was left standing there, the weight of the legal battle sinking in. It was no longer just about family. It was about the future, the business, and the values Grandpa had left behind. It wasn't long after that visit that the real cost of this battle became clear. The legal proceedings began. My mother filed a formal petition to contest the will, claiming that Grandpa had been of unsound mind when he updated it. The lawyers for both sides began exchanging letters, and everything was in motion. But it wasn't just the legal battle that I had to contend with. The emotional toll was harder to deal with. I had always believed that family was everything, but now it felt like the very fabric of my family was unraveling. My mother's bitterness, Craig's silent manipulation, Max's discomfort. It was all weighing on me. The guilt, the accusations, the manipulation. It was like an invisible force that had me trapped. And then one night, something unexpected happened. Max, my brother, showed up at my door. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly, his voice unsure. I let him in, trying not to let the tension between us show. For weeks, he had been silent, sitting on the sidelines, avoiding taking a side. I didn't know what to expect now, but I knew I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine. "I've been thinking about everything," Max said, sitting down on the couch. "About what's been happening? I was wrong to stay out of it. I should have said something sooner. I can't just stand by while this happens." I sat down beside him, my heart aching. "It's not your fault, Max. You don't have to take sides. But this isn't just about money. This is about Grandpa's legacy, about what he stood for, and I'm not going to let it fall apart." Max looked at me, a mixture of guilt and understanding in his eyes. "I get it. I do. I'm sorry. I just didn't know what to do. But I want to help." That was when I realized something. I had spent so long fighting this battle on my own, thinking I had to carry the weight of everything alone. But I didn't. Max was finally seeing the truth, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. The legal battle raged on for months. There were moments of doubt, moments where I thought I might crumble under the pressure. But each time, I thought about Grandpa, about the lessons he taught me, and I knew I couldn't give in. In the end, the case never went to trial. My mother realized that with the evidence I had, Grandpa's clear intentions, the letters, the journal entries, and the testimony from George, Grandpa's best friend, her case had no standing. She tried to continue with the legal proceedings, but it became clear that she wasn't going to win. The estate was mine to manage, and the decision was final. It wasn't easy. The emotional scars of the battle remained, and the rift between my family and me was far from healed. But I had done what was right. I had stood firm, just as Grandpa would have wanted. And I knew that in the end, I had honored his legacy. Months later, I stood in front of the Matthews hardware store, the place where it all began. The business was thriving again, thanks to the hard work I put into it. And with Max by my side, we were building something that Grandpa would have been proud of. My mother remained distant, but I had stopped trying to fix things with her. Some relationships can't be saved, no matter how much you try. But I knew I had done what Grandpa would have wanted me to do. And as for me, I had finally found my place. I was no longer just his granddaughter. I was the one carrying his legacy forward, and I was doing it my way. Grandpa always said, "It's not about the money, Mia. It's about what you do with it." I finally understood what he meant, and for the first time in my life, I was doing something that mattered. The legal battle raged on for months. There were moments of doubt, moments where I thought I might crumble under the pressure. But each time, I thought about Grandpa, about the lessons he taught me, and I knew I couldn't give in. In the end, the case never went to trial. My mother realized that with the evidence I had, Grandpa's clear intentions, the letters, the journal entries, and the testimony from George, Grandpa's best friend, her case had no standing. She tried to continue with the legal proceedings, but it became clear that she wasn't going to win. The estate was mine to manage, and the decision was final. It wasn't easy. The emotional scars of the battle remained, and the rift between my family and me was far from healed. But I had done what was right. I had stood firm, just as Grandpa would have wanted. And I knew that in the end, I had honored his legacy. Months later, I stood in front of the Matthews hardware store, the place where it all began. The business was thriving again, thanks to the hard work I put into it. And with Max by my side, we were building something that Grandpa would have been proud of. My mother remained distant, but I had stopped trying to fix things with her. Some relationships can't be saved, no matter how much you try. But I knew I had done what Grandpa would have wanted me to do. And as for me, I had finally found my place. I was no longer just his granddaughter. I was the one carrying his legacy forward, and I was doing it my way. Grandpa always said, "It's not about the money, Mia. It's about what you do with it." I finally understood what he meant, and for the first time in my life, I was doing something that mattered.